All right, good evening, everybody. Hey, appreciate you coming, and thank you very much. Tonight we have our guest, Mr. Rob Haddock from Coca-Cola. And Rob and I go back several years with an organization called Council Supply Chain Management Professionals. And that's how we interfaced, and we've been committee members on various committees. And I asked Rob, knowing what he has done and is doing at Coca-Cola, that I felt he had a pretty good story to tell us because we can relate to the product, we live with the product, and he has a very good story to tell us tonight. The focus that I have asked him to present was to show us the total delivery process, what's involved with getting the Coca-Cola product to our shelf, and how each one of our major subject that we're studying has an effect on that delivery process. So he's going to touch base on all our majors and how we have a contributing factor and how important our role is, and we are affecting the entire process from beginning to end. So he's got a very good story and very good presentation to tell us. So I knew Rob from many years, that he's a very unique individual. He has a very good story to tell, and what's very unique about him is that he's a one-time only employee of Coca-Cola. It's a rarity in today's business changing model where companies are constantly turning over employees, or employees are moving every 3 to 5 years. He's been with Coca-Cola, he's in his 30th year now, right out of high school. He's one of those unique stories. He started young, I mean, we all did. But again, he's unique, and the good thing about it is that he learned to say yes, he learned to roll with the punches, he learned to get up and come back every day, because corporate America was a lot of curveballs. He started his career pushing a broom on the shop floor. He worked as a union member. Not there's anything wrong with that. He started out at Coca-Cola as a union employee, went back to school while he was doing that work, and working himself up as he improved himself educationally, moved himself up in the lines of responsibility. He's an economics major with a management minor. We won't hold that against him, but he is in the supply chain profession because Coca-Cola is that. Okay, so his jobs took him into this line of subject, supply chain management, but he's a planner. So he's involved now on a much higher strategic level, that he can bring this insight to us and share with us his experiences of the 30 years, how Coca-Cola's changed in those years that he's worked with them, and how he changed also with them to make him a better person in the industry as well as to Coca-Cola. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Rob and Mr. Rob Haddock.
Thanks for having me. I'm not sure where to start. I have been 30 years. In fact, I validated it on my way down here. My 30th anniversary is August 1st. So one of the beautiful things about Coca-Cola, when I hit the 25 mark, I got a Rolex, which I've worn twice. It's one of those real glamorous ones that are not very functional. So at 30, I'm going to get something that's a little bit more practical. I can't believe 30 years have gone by so quickly, and I've done such a wide range of jobs with the Coca-Cola Company, and I can't wait to get to work every day because it's an exciting company, it's an exciting brand, and hopefully in the next hour I will let you know what really is behind the scenes here in North America, because Coca-Cola is more than just one ownership, especially here in the United States. And I'll give you a little bit of history. I'll touch on how many marketing majors. Okay, great. Finance? Okay. Come on, hands high, where are you? All right, a couple of finance. Operations, management, other disciplines? Okay. Yeah, I work in downtown Atlanta in the high tower buildings there, so I deal with people from technical, from sales, from marketing, from finance every day. In my supply planning role, I have permission to go and play in anybody else's sandbox I need to make sure that we can maintain continuity of supply of our products across the United States. So, you know, I got it here, right here. Successful product supply system is a team of a team effort of demanding collaboration and open communication. So I have to talk to you. You have to talk to me. I have to understand what you're saying, what you're trying to get done. You have to understand from the supply side what we need to do to make it happen. I tell the marketeers that, we make your dreams come true, right? Because it's only as good as your execution in the field. And finance, you guys are keeping us honest, right? We could sell a gazillion only if we had all of the trade. Well, at the end of the day, there's no money at the end of the day, right? If you spend too much. So I'm going to give you an overview. John said don't get too tied up in planning. So a little disclaimer, this is my attempt at humor. The words I'm about to say by no means are trying to switch you marketing and finance people over to supply chain. All right, even though I think it's the best thing, it keeps me coming back every day, I don't want to sway you, but I do want to give you an understanding of what happens on the supply side. And the importance of cross-functional, transforming marketing dreams into operational execution while realizing a profit. My material will be heavily focused on the wonderful and exciting world of the product supply, but I will blend in all disciplines. So a little bit about Coca-Cola North America brief history. Now, of course, everybody here in Atlanta, right, you guys all love Coca-Cola products, right? I'm not going to excuse you if you got another favorite brand, but hopefully I can swing you tonight. But if you look back, a guy in a pharmacy almost 125 years ago, and our 125th anniversary is this summer, came up with a concoction that was supposed to invigorate and revive. And it did have a little something special in it that was since taken out of the formula, right? But that did cause a little bit of a hook there at the beginning. But John Pemberson at Jacobs Pharmacy got it all starting. And at first it was just a fountain drink. So everybody's familiar with fountain. You go to McDonald's, you go to the cafeteria here, you put up your glass, and out comes fountain. Bottling, this package form right here was really not forefront when they first came up with this idea. And the first bottling contract was sold to a group of investors in Chattanooga. The plant is still there. It's part of our United Group for $1. And the right to that distribution network was how far a horse could go with Coca-Cola in one day in return before sunset. So basically, you could sell distribution rights. I'm not a horse person. Was at 10, 15 miles. So every 10, 15 miles, you could literally have a contract to distribute, make and distribute Coca-Cola 125 years ago or 110 years ago based on this. Now that same contract was sold time and time and time and time again across the North America landscape. So by the time CCE was formed in the early 1980s, there were hundreds of ownerships, all with the Coca-Cola brand that they represented. So has anybody tried to herd cats? Right? It's impossible, right? They just keep going in different directions. One of the hardest things to do is to keep all of these independent bottlers aligned with the strategy of marketing, the strategy of quality, of distribution. So what happened, along with Diet Coke, which is now the #2 brand ahead of that, the blue company, Coca-Cola Enterprises was formed with the intent of bringing together all of these small bottlers. And I'll show you a map in a little bit that just shows you how far they got prior to October of 2010 when Muhtar Kent, who is the CEO of the Coca-Cola Company, announced that we were acquiring Coca-Cola Enterprises North American unit back from, basically it separated the mothership, we were bringing it back. Both companies have been in Atlanta for a long time. In fact, CCE, as it was at one of the campus buildings before they went to Wildwood, up in Marietta, up in the 1990s. And CCE also had a large bottling operation in Europe. So there's still a CCE, but it is all Europe. Now Coca-Cola North America and Coca-Cola Enterprises formed one of the world's largest supply chains in Coca-Cola refreshment. So we have some 70,000 people, over 100 manufacturing sites, 600 distribution centers across the United States, and we control about 90% of the distribution volume in the US. Now, I don't want this to be a monologue all me for the next 45 minutes, but if there are questions before I get to each break, please go ahead and raise your hand, shout out. And every question except the formula, I guess, is fair, because I don't know that. And I do focus specifically on North America, so I know a lot of other things are going on in the world with the Coca-Cola Company. I may not be very well versed in those, but I can entertain them if you do have some. Plus, it gives me a chance to catch my breath. So, our vision, Mr. Kent really set out a vision for where do we want to be in 2020. And I have to admit that our good friends up in New York, the Pepsi guys, are really a great competitor. I mean, they make us better. That competition really brings out the best in you. And I have to admit, I don't think I have, it's fair to say this, that for a while in the 1990s, Coke kind of lost its way. Anybody remember, Coca-Cola, the new Coke? Right? Was that a marketing faux pas, or was it a brilliant move? Because Classic came back with a rage and really ingrained the product. We also launched a product called C2 not too long ago. Didn't really last in the marketplace, but one of my friends brought over the Coke Zero can. Do you guys still have that? Yeah, one of my props here. Yeah, so C2, if you're on the marketing and finance side, great idea with C2. You probably don't remember it, but it was half the carbs and half something else. I don't remember what it was, and I was part of the team that launched it. But the learning was from the marketing experience that nobody knew what C2 really stood for. So Coke Zero comes out. And within 3 years, Coke Zero, through the power of marketing, I think they just did the Final Four. We used the term billion-dollar brands. The Zero brand became a billion-dollar brand in a very short period of time because of the power of marketing, getting the right finances, and then having a supply chain aligned to execute. And it tastes like Coke Classic or Coca-Cola. So that was the hook right there. Same taste as Coke, but for us middle-aging guys and gals, we don't need the calories, right? So I can have my same great taste of Coke without having to go to the treadmill afterwards. So North America is back together, accelerating growth and driving long-term profitability. So the key to profitability, what is run an efficient supply chain. So the finance guys will give marketing the dollars they need to reinvest in the brand. If your supply chain is very inefficient, it starts to be a drag on your ability to grow the business. So bringing this large supply chain together at Coca-Cola Refreshment was the intent of freeing up the capital to let us go drive more consumption. Because at the end of the day, everybody in marketing is going to love this, Coca-Cola is a marketing company. All right? We are all about influencing your next purchase to be one of our products. But I'm going to start with finance. All right? So finance, keeping score and ensuring future profitability. And I hate to use the term bean counter, because I was an economics major. I don't know what I was doing. When I was in college, there was no such thing as supply chain management. Through a series of dumb luck episodes, I ended up where I am today. Sweeping floors, taking opportunities, taking laterals, just learning everything along the way I possibly could. And people along the way entrusted me to say, hey, you did pretty good in that last thing. Go do this. So I've done the Olympics. I've done ERP rollouts. You name it. I've done customer service, transportation. The list goes on and on. But from the financial perspective, your role is vitally critical. You got to keep us on track through the P&L reporting. Profitability of analyzing the future. Are all those dreams that we have on growing the business really, can we invest enough to make it real? Capital investments, lines, infrastructure costs millions and millions and millions of dollars. So if you're going to put a $20 million line in the ground, you want to make sure that at some point in time you're going to reap the benefits of that. And then productivity. Companies cannot rest on their laurels, right? Because the other guy it's a game of leapfrog. So if I have waste in my system and somebody is doing something differently to make their supply chain more efficiently, well, how do I get ahead of them? So they're the ones that help us understand what's the cost benefit if I do something differently today, tomorrow. Am I going to be able to take that money and reinvest it back in the brand? So there's a common theme here of freeing up cash from the supply chain to grow the brand, right? Because we want to convince you, lovely consumers, that your dollar should be ours. Yes? Yeah, go ahead. Oh, first
What's
row.
your timeline for you looking back for your return investment? What are you looking for that return investment? 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, or what?
Typically what they want to do is have an IRR of about 20%.
20%?
Right, so if you put your money in a mattress or in the bank, you're gaining what, 10%, 11%? So if you've got a project that's going to return 20% over a 3-year period, chances are you'll get the capital to go ahead and invest. But sometimes I couldn't tell you how many assets we have sitting around just idle because the bet didn't come true, right? So when you do the investment, you want to make sure that you have somebody on your technical team that can say, as a contingency, well, that line can do this, but it can also do this over here. All right, so that's one of the benefits. So it is a big risk game. Yes, gentleman in the back.
Yes,
Yeah.
what external benchmarks you use for your price analysis? And is it short-term, long-term, and do you use compared to the other guys? Or?
Yeah, I don't delve. The question is benchmarks on price elasticity.
Right.
Yeah. Great example. Right now, we on our Minute Maid businesses and our Simply Orange businesses, we just took a price increase because, believe it or not, there's a shortage of orange crop globally. So law of supply and demand, right? You raise the price to slow down demand. Well, Tropicana, our major competitor, also took price. So we took a 20 to 30 cent on-shelf price increase. Was supposed to drop demand by 5%. What we found in repeat situations in the past is that if everybody raises the water level, you see very little slowdown in demand because now the consumers just dig a little bit deeper into their pocket. So problem is we probably are going to have trouble securing orange solids later in the year between crops. But in the short term, we're going to reap some benefits from, hey, I'm selling slightly less at a higher profit. So the price elasticity really comes into play. You'd be surprised what a dime on shelf really does to overall demand. Yeah, so those marketing analysis people are all over that type of price elasticity to see if we move this far, what's going to happen. And then on the supply side, we need to know that because we're either slowing things down or we're speeding things up based on that price in the marketplace. Good question. Yes, ma'am, all the way in the back? Oh, okay. This is basically an outline, and I'm not going to go through all of this, but just to give you an example of, if you see on the finance perspective, financial planning, profit analysis, growth plans, long-term infrastructure, all of those pieces are tied directly to figuring out our strategic planning process. So we've got a connection with our finance group in every one of these things. What's my strategic or my direct section? What's my operating model? What's my customer service, inventory, distribution strategy? On the planning side, how am I going to execute? So our finance team is there with us hand in hand every step of the way in the supply chain, letting us know whether the decisions we are making are going to cost us money or make us money at the end of the day. Now, our finance support basically falls into two sections, and I work with both of these groups. You've got the financial shared services. So if you're going into a finance career, chances are you'll fall into one of these two areas. There's the people that are kind of really keeping score, the P&L. So it may be some repetitive work month after month after month. Or then you've got the product supply, manufacturing, finance. And those are the people that are more forward-looking. What is the capital investment I need? What is the strategic analysis? If I have productivity initiatives, what are they going to do to generate savings that I can then turn into some type of revenue stream? So that's kind of it on the finance side. Any questions before I switch over to marketing? Okay? John, get the hook out too if I start to slow down. All right, so here's the role of marketing. And it's really, these are my words, I didn't come up with this, but keeping the consumer's attention, right? Because we are so bombarded with different media inputs. And I don't know what happens to you when I get to the final decision point, but it could be right to the last second and something else comes in and says, oh, well, I'm going to buy because of this, or I'm going to buy because of that. And it all really ties back to marketing. Whether I am Diet Coke, Pepsi, Tropicana, Simply, Minute Maid, Delta, Continental, we're all using basically the same resources. The supplier that provides me bottles is the same supplier that provides the other guy bottles. So efficiently on the supply side versus how well can you market, it really is the differentiation. So if I only had to make fruit punch in a 20-ounce bottle all day, my life would be boring. So I'm really glad that marketing brings excitement to my everyday life, because they are the key driver to the changes in the system. The new product launches, so what's the next Coca-Cola? And I was reminded by our PR people that we no longer use the word classic, right? Because that was the re-intro after the 1990s faux pas. Promotional activity. How many people have walked into Kroger and seen the 10 for 10s, right?
Yeah,
All right. I love those and I hate those because sometimes they tell me about them, sometimes they don't. When they don't, believe me, it costs me more than 10 for 10. Seasonal events. Anybody watch the Final Four? Yeah. All right. Anybody see this sponsorship a few times? All right. How many of you went out and bought a six-pack right afterwards? Everybody? We'll keep working on that. And then brand growth. Simply Orange. Yes?
Just a quick question. I'm sure you measure it.
Yeah.
What did you see in terms of a bump in that product sale after the Final Four? I'm sure the marketing guys were held accountable. Okay, you spent all this money. What happened? Was it good for you, bad for you, sideways, or what?
That is a great debate that we always have, is what drives consumers' behavior. Is it the marketing or is it the price point on shelf? And what we'll normally do is we'll throw that hand grenade in the sales and marketing room and we'll just watch the cat fight. Because it's really, each individual reacts differently to an input, right? I'm not necessarily influenced by market, I'm influenced by price as long as it's a Coke product, right? So if it's not 4 for $12 at Kroger, I won't buy that week. I'll wait till it goes on sale. I don't get any discounts, all right, even though I work for the company. So it's really hard to quantify, but we know that it's almost like a presence thing, that if you weren't there, there is the risk that the other guy may infiltrate your ground. All right, so it's almost like a battle of détente, right? You got nukes, we got nukes, so everybody stays status quo. I mean, we'll give the other guys the Super Bowl, but we'll take up some of the others, right? So we kind of have our grounds outlined.
So you didn't see an immediate, but more of an image campaign, a market presence campaign.
Right, because the same time that the Final Four is going on, we've got displays everywhere. So you can't go into a Publix or a Kroger or Walmart without tripping over our product. At X amount of product placements in every aisle. So,
question. You said
yeah.
Kroger, obviously they didn't communicate to you when they're having a sale.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously you're expediting the freight and then your transportation costs increase.
Oh yeah.
But is that safe to say? Does that happen a lot with them?
When it does, and I'll get into some of the what DIP means to us, and it's all about a repetitive process of staying connected between sales, marketing, operations, and finance.
Right.
So that process has been around for a good 50 years, but it's the discipline to follow it and the importance that somebody knew Kroger was doing a 10 for 10, right? They just didn't wake that up and do, hey, Sunday, let's mess with them, let's do a 10 for 10. Somebody knew it. Somebody put trade dollars on the table to fund that, but they didn't communicate to the right people to support it, to supply it. So there creates the fire drill.
Now does that extra transportation cost come out of their budget?
Eventually it goes into the brand P&L, right? But it gets lost But if you do that enough times,
Motivate 'em to-
it starts to add up to real money if you do that enough times, yeah. And then brand growth, capital. I'm not sure if many people know that Simply Orange is a brand of the Coca-Cola Company. And I'll share a little bit about what they're doing this year, and I'll talk specifically to them. So we've all seen this, right? This is what you get barraged with, whether it's downtown Atlanta, any major city. So if I'm just getting off the subway and I'm walking out there and I'm going, wow, I could go to Applebee's, I could go to Ruby's, I could go to Carabao and get a Cinnabon. So how do you forecast that? How do you know where you're going to end up at the end of the day, right? Same thing in a store shelf. Almost the same thing. You're walking down there, you're bombarded with color, bombarded with price. How do you make your decision? If you're not in a Coca-Cola household or Pepsi household, you can be influenced easily one way or the other, right? So we're all trying to figure that out, saying, all right, this is what sales and marketing are doing in the marketplace. These are the price points they've set. How am I going to make sure I got the right product at the right time to supply the system? Because the last thing I want to hear is, I just put a whole bunch of trade dollars and we didn't have product on the shelf. And the other guys got my spots. They got our dollars, literally, because that's what the customers will do. So here's some things that I was revealed last month. I was in Houston, where they do all of this Simply. And the marketing team is sharing this information with us, right? Now, it doesn't have any volumes on it. You'd like to know that. Well, if I'm going to do some activity here, what's it going to mean? If I'm going to drop a 50-cent coupon, what's that do to demand? If I'm going to be on the Today Show with a spot, how many people are going to run out and grab Simply Orange? If I got coupons in advertising, what we don't know is the impact. But we do know that something is going on. And we have experience from the past that when they've done this type of activity, we will get a marginal lift. Redemption on a coupon, most of the time, doesn't happen immediately. It'll sit around, it'll be stuffed in a pocket, right? It'll go through the wash a couple of times, you'll finally pull it out, and you'll run in right before the expiration date. All right, that's a reality. But eventually, it may find its way. Also with Simply Orange, all kinds of different commercials, advertisements. Great success story. If you've been into Chick-fil-A lately, they just started putting the 400 ml little carafe bottle in there, okay? Yes?
Now, after the initial, launch, you're trying to get the word out about Simply Orange, will the marketing campaign continue as strong, or will it kind of, dwindle down?
It depends on how much trade money they have to support that. We just launched this 400 ml in Chick-fil-A, and we saw a 400% jump over what the marketing team expected, right? Because Chick-fil-A went way above. As you walk in on the counter, you're right here, and they've got a big display of 400 ml Simply Orange juice. Well, that immediately triggered consumers to go, hey, I haven't really had it in that trial size, so I'm going to go ahead and get some. They didn't even have to discount it on price. They just put marketing here. So it had an immediate ripple effect. Fortunately, we got tipped off that this was starting to happen, so we could crank up manufacturing at a quick rate to manage it. But that's the power of marketing, is that you put it out there and you're not quite sure what's going to happen, but you know it's going to move the consumers in a direction. You just don't know how deep it's going to go.
Rob, what do you do to help manage the bullwhip effect on that? Obviously, that can create a lot of havoc inside an organization.
Well, that's why our teams, our supply teams, are so closely linked with our field sales and our marketing people. So, and that's part of our org structure, is that I hate to use the term we vent the silos, but we're tearing down those silos. So I can walk right up to the head of marketing or head of sales and get them on the phone, and we can call the account and say, okay, that reorder buyer, what's really going on in your market? What are you really doing with this product? And it's those type of relationships, and helping our sales guy first understand that, hey, on the supply side, if you don't help me, I can't help you. So it's all about that communication And we've actually gotten a lot of our sales and marketing teams to understand some of the intricacies of manufacturing and distribution.
That's the sandbox flexibility that you were talking about
Right,
a little bit earlier.
right. I mean, sometimes I get my hand slapped, but I never stop to go play in somebody else's sandbox, especially when it's in the interest of building the brand and ensuring continuity. So a lot of good activity here for this, wonderful brand that continues to grow.
So how does the social media enter into it? I mean, what kind of effect have you seen by social media?
I mean, the marketing people love the fact that, there's stuff on Facebook, and I hate to admit it, but I don't have a Facebook account. All right? I'm on the computer all day long. I don't need to go home. My kids all do. And I don't even have what's that adult one. But, I just, I don't have the LinkedIn. I get invites all the time. It's just I don't want to be on the computer any more than I have to be. But it's another way of communicating to a new group of a new generation. Right? So the media that influenced our generations may not influence all the high school students I've got running around my house. Right? They're thinking differently, different ways to connect to them. So that's where our marketing team is out there with all kinds of media activity across all the brands, with all these different Facebook sites. So that was it on finance, that was it on marketing. So let me talk to you a little bit about more than just carbonated drinks, and this is the environment that I come from. I grew up in the Minute Maid, Powerade, Simply, Vitamin Water, Smart Water, part of the business. But for the last 10 years, I've been dabbling in both the bottle can, carbonated side, and in the still businesses. So this is our network. So the good thing is we like to put our capability to where the people are, right? Because you really don't want to be dragging stuff all over the place. You could see our total network, and this is all ownerships. Roughly 742 facilities across the United States and Canada, right? Because most of the Canadian population, 70%, lives within about 30 miles of the U.S. border. So manufacturing sites, distribution sites, cross-dock sites, a very large network to manage, one of the largest supply chains now globally. And I talked earlier about ownerships. So I gave you the little CCE story. All of the red is basically Coca-Cola refreshments today. Roughly 85% of the volume. Our friends out in Swire, they have a lot of territory, but there's, granted, there's more cattle than people out there. You've got some other major players, two other major bottlers, the Consolidated Group and the United Group here in the southeast. Northern New England, of course, is up there in the upper right. But you've got some of these, 75 other ownerships in the United States. It could be that right that they got from their grandfather to distribute, and today they still are in ownership and they control the area that horse-drawn carriage went to and back in one day. All right? But to the consumer, we want to make sure that nobody knows anything different. Nobody knows that there's 76 ownerships here in the United States. They see Coca-Cola, they see the red truck, they see the brands on the shelves. And our job is to make sure that every ownership follows the same mandate, follows the same quality, has the same financial health, follows the same marketing plans. Did John plant that question? That was a great segue. Well, how do we do that? Well, we want to be within arm's reach of refreshment, right? And you were saying earlier that you were at some obscure place, right, and there was a Coke.
Yes.
All right, you don't know how it got there, right? Middle of Malaysia, but it was there. And it wasn't magic, right? Somebody had the foresight to get it there, so in case you were thirsty, this is what we do. We decide what to make, where to move it. We got to service the customer, so we're heavily focused on that, and we want to minimize the waste. So, what goes on behind the scenes? I already talked a little bit about the scale of stuff. We just got a whole bunch of production, distribution, multiple routes, multiple product platforms. I can talk about cold fill, hot fill, spring water, still water, reverse osmosis. I mean, we dabble in all the different product categories, retort, but we always want to have the goal of high productivity, high service, low inventory targets. We drive ourselves crazy intentionally because we don't want to have a lot of product around. Our stuff is not wine, it does not get better with age, right? If ever you have a flat Coke, everything has a best of use by date. And you can tell when you have a flat Coke or a spoiled juice drink. We don't want that because it could influence you to go somewhere else next time. So we're very sensitive about turning the inventory, but keeping the service levels high. So it really starts with a framework that I don't know if we made it up or one of our global teams made it up, but it's sticking. And DOIP sounds kind of goofy, but it's demand operations and inventory planning. And finance and marketing play a significant role in each one of these core functional areas. And I'm going to walk through just the highlights of each one of them. And hopefully my time is doing okay. John's giving me the speed it up a little bit. And I will do that because I realize I want to save more time for questions. But you know, everybody knows what demand planning is, right? It's the essence of getting a consensus, unconstrained forecast, collaborative process with sales and marketing. Operations planning, rough cut capacity planning. Do I have the resources at the right time to make the inventory I need and maintain inventory levels? Inventory planning, the cost of inventory. Inventory is waste, right? So less is better, but you got to have the right mix. So it gets into what's my trigger points for replenishments, a lot of master data. And then the grand finale is the sales and operations planning process. So what am I going to do every week to make sure that I'm on track? And I'll walk you through that. And you can see, here are our touch points. Ongoing. Marketing, finance, operations, all right? We're basically three legs of the same stool. We can't make it work without one or the other. So, unconstrained forecast. What's it do? You want to have the highest customer service. You want to keep safety stocks low. You want to reduce financial. You want to improve supply chain planning. And we do it unconstrained because we want to say, okay, Mr. Business, if you didn't have any limits, what could you possibly sell in the marketplace? Don't blame supply chain because you can't sell it. Tell us what it is, and then we'll come back later and tell you if we can support it or not. So how much, where, what, all of those questions are asked of our sales and marketing team. And that goes on continuously. Every month, every week, we do a check-in. What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? And then we turn that into information that helps all of these different activities around the wheel, whether it's something that's going on in a 1 week to 3 week cycle, or whether it is somebody who has part of our procurement team who has to procure a unique ingredient that's grown halfway around the world that is only harvested in a short period of time. Because a lot of these unique flavors require unique ingredients that aren't grown here in the United States. They come from abroad. So that information all flows out there to help somebody make a better decision. Moving fast here, but operations planning, capacity, production, materials, deployments, the trucks, and then the supply planning processes for SOP. So this is coming up with, I've got an unconstrained forecast. Now I'm going to see if I can actually make it happen. So if you look at this flow chart, focus in on the bubbles. The demand planning says, I want to do all of this. So guys on my team are saying, well, I've got enough firepower manufacturing-wise and inventory-wise, I got enough warehousing to store it, or I don't, and I better go out and get some more, but if I do, that's going to cost more, so that could cause an issue. Production planning, we're basically telling the plants what to do, those 80, 90, 100 plants, what to make and when. All of our materials from all around the country, whether it be bottles, cans, caps, etc., we're giving them the direction on what to make because our plan is basically their forecast. And then how many trucks do I need? And where are they going to go? So that demand piece flows and is synced right up with the supply piece, and it blows out to all of these different support engines that if you're successful, you're making money at the lowest possible cost. If you're not, you're having to throw more money at the situation that's having a negative impact on the business. Rough cut capacity planning. Have you guys covered stuff like that? It's kind of what if scenario planning. Anybody had any experience with that? It's actually pretty basic when you look at it. I have a beginning inventory, I have a projected demand, I have projected production. I'm going to end here at this point in time. And it's perpetual, so you just continue to roll it, you continue to roll it, continue to roll it. And the game is, I don't want to go below a certain level, right? And that is basically, that's the baseline for how you run manufacturing or how you do distribution. It's, yes? Yeah, hi.
On your supply chain side, how do you guys do any exporting and importing to your other international locations? You said some of your products are out of the country and so forth, but what about the things that are grown here? Do you export them overseas as well and so forth?
Well, one good example of product that we import from our Mexican partners is we distribute, we call it Mexican Coke. It's basically Coca-Cola that's made in Mexico with pure cane sugar as opposed to the sweetener we use here. So we are importing from 4 different manufacturing facilities scattered throughout Mexico product into the U.S. So if you look at international, the international aisle in the Kroger and the Walmart, you'll see Coke from Mexico. You'll see Pepsi also has a competitive brand, and it's definitely a different taste profile. So yes, there's imports in, there's exports out. But then when you do, you have to make sure that you comply with all the label laws and maybe the language laws. So it could require dual language packaging or special ingredient information. But then on the material side, we bring in stuff from all over the place. Especially fruits, apples from China, from Chile, you name it. We've got people that are all over South America in sync with the growing season and making, purchases of guava or whatever other unique fruit goes into the products.
And going back a little bit further, I was trying to get your attention.
Yeah.
About this car. How well does your sales and marketing team work with the supply chain side? Especially when you're saying something about even the Simply Orange, does your salespeople, do you have like a certain salesperson that do just Chick-fil-A across the board and just trying to get all the Simply Oranges out, or is it like a group of people that do like Chick-fil-A, McDonald's, and so forth? How does that align with those 3 departments, your sales, your marketing, and your supply chain?
Yeah, so the question was around brand alignment and product alignment on the sales and marketing side?
Yes.
Yeah. So, there's specific resources in marketing that are specifically about the brand. So there's a unique brand person or group that deals specifically with Simply or with Classic. But then when you go on to the sales side, the customer wants to see one face to the sales, right? So if you're the salesman, you're bringing in the whole Coca-Cola portfolio with you. And you have to speak somewhat intelligently about Simply, about Classic, about Powerade, whatever it is. Now you may have help, a sales team. Like there's a sales team in Bentonville, Arkansas, because of the size of the customer. But I'd love to use the Piggly Wiggly example. Maybe not as many resources are calling in on that buyer because it's one buyer that controls 2 distribution centers that go to all the Piggly Wiggly stores. So we try and match up the resources to the size of the account. Good question. So fast forwarding here, I won't get into a lot of the details, but we drill down to production planning, to detailed scheduling. It really gets down to sequencing what product is going to run on what line in what sequence. And we do that all with a mind of making sure that we have the right level of product availability to meet outbound customer orders. Because at the end of the day, like I said before, if we don't service that customer the best possible, the customer is going to be upset, marketing is going to be upset, sales is going to be upset, and we're going to feel it financially. So, it's really closing the loop with right down to making the schedules work for us. Now, inventory planning. A lot of people are still struggling with what is a safety stock, what is cycle stock, what's emergency reserve. In our Coca-Cola refreshment workforce, we have over 200 people that make decisions about what to plan in our plants, what to move from point A to point B. So we are constantly helping them understand, and even our organization, what is an inventory policy? And really what it is, it's an agreement that I'm going to maintain this amount of product, and at this point in time, when it hits here, I'm going to run X amount of cases that should bring my inventory up a little bit higher, and that's going to be enough cases until I can cycle back to that product again. All right? So I use a lot of examples like, well, you guys could be familiar, okay, when you're on your last six-pack of Coke, right? When do you run to the store, right? When you get down to 2 cans? Right? When do you stop at the gas station? All right? So your safety stock might be 1/4 of a tank. That's your level that you feel like, okay, now I can go replenish. Same rules apply here. Your pantry is a perfect example of inventory policy, right? You don't want to run out. You don't want to have too much. You don't want to overextend. We do that with our whole inventory network of finished goods, materials, and ingredients. Yes, in the back.
Wouldn't your procurement team be over that project of knowing when to restock or send stocks to these stores? The procurement team would they be over?
We are the procurement team. Our planning organization plays that procurement role. We have procurement people that work with, say, trucking companies to procure their services, people that work with the can people, the juice people, so they are more in a buying role. But then our planning team is saying, okay, this is when the truck has to move, this is when we have to order the cans, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. But good question. So this inventory policy, you saw it earlier here, it's really part of the strategic planning process, and it really gets down to ABC categorization. And it really comes down to sales and marketing again. Once again, you guys on the sales and marketing side play a vital role in which SKUs drive the most volume and what is the most profitable SKUs and which customers are going to be the most profitable customers. I may have a customer that drives a lot of volume, they make a lot of noise, but at the end of the day, I don't make any money, right? So, but because they're the squeaky wheel, they seem to get preferential treatment. Those are some of the things that are hard to break. And if you don't do the financial ABC analysis, you don't know, am I really making money with customer ABC or not? You almost have to get into a categorization calling people gold, silver, and bronze. Whether it's customers or whether it's the product. So you never want to run out of Coca-Cola or Diet Coke, right? That would be never. But if I run out of Tutti Frutti, whatever, I can get away with that for a few days, right? And nobody's going to call up. Somebody may call up and complain, but it's not going to be the large amount of noise I'm going to get if I run out of Coca-Cola. So we have to kind of keep that in mind because you have to rationalize. We don't have 100% service. Nobody really does in the consumer goods product category. So you have to find out what's that right service level that you can afford. We have high service levels, but and they're ones that will keep our customers happy and keep our customers in stock. But it all comes back to the inventory policy. So I need to know what is my replenishment rate, what's my burn rate, what's sales and marketing doing, what's my cost of maintaining. A lot of things happen like this. So we're floating along. I could have great customer service, right? But what happens here? If I got all this inventory just sitting there, right? If you don't have your money, if you got your money in a mattress, it's not making any return. Inventory is basically the equal to that. I'm not doing anything with it. I paid to make it, it's just sitting there getting dusty. The flip side is that if I get too aggressive, I could be in a bad spot. So the magic is finding the water level, and that's what inventory policy helps you get to. And believe me, I've been on both sides of the spectrum every other week because of the scope, the size of Coca-Cola. We always have some ship on the rocks, and we always have some ship that's floating way too high above the waterline. Yes, sir?
Would you consider your suppliers a price leader or a price follower?
Our suppliers?
You as a supplier, would you consider yourself a price leader or a price?
In terms of raising or lowering the price in the marketplace? I know that in our most recent example with, because of the orange solids, we took price a week prior to Trop. Because we realized, even though you don't want to take price, we realized that if we don't take price and try and slow things down, we won't have any oranges to put in glasses before this next crop comes in. Yes, sir.
Did the tsunami in Japan affect your business globally as far as products, supply chains, and things like that?
It did. I mean, even for some brands here in the United States, we're actually supplying different components. There's probably a brand you're not aware of, but Sokenbicha is a tea that is one of the #1 brands in Japan. And we're starting to grow the market here in the United States. But we get all of our supplies from Japan because that's where they make it. And we were told that until things return to normal, they're unable to supply us. So we're not quite sure what we're going to do with that infancy brand that we're trying to grow. We have enough material to make so much more, and then the hope is that they get their operations back up and running, and we can be back in business. Yes, ma'am.
In your supply chain management, how advanced are your track and trace systems, and what investments are you all making in technology to improve the placement of your products and in tracking that inventory?
So like tracking, tracing in the event of a recall, product withdrawal, or on shelf?
Yeah, to provide your customer to know where their product is at any given moment. Do y'all have it that advanced, or are y'all going in that direction?
So where the product is en route to the customer? Okay. Yeah, most of our carriers do have GPS systems that we can find out when it left. We know when it left our facility, but we have a measurement called on time in full. So we measure, did it show up at the customer's dock when it was supposed to? And if it's off track, we deal a lot with C.H. Robinson and other large trucking companies. We have policies in place that if it's going to be a late delivery, the communication occurs so we can tell the customer before they're the first ones to find out. Yeah, so I mean, we figured if you could track your iPod from China, right, over the internet, least we could do is track a truck, going from Bentonville, Arkansas to somewhere else. Much bigger package. Yes?
In your experience, what has caused the biggest or the largest disruptions in the supply chain, whether it be lack of supplies due to environmental issues or anything that would disrupt it?
Here in the United States?
Yes.
I think, I'm more familiar with here in the United States, but I mean, our biggest disruption to our supply chain, our product supply continuity, is just us not talking to each other. I mean, at the end of the day, we're very fortunate that we have lots of resources at our disposal, and most of the time I can make anything if I know about it. But if my first warning is the flyer in the Sunday paper, then I don't have a lot of time to respond, right? Pardon? My days, I think I've got 5 minutes left, but my days in Hightstown, New Jersey, back in the 1990s, and if anyone's ever lived in New Jersey, you know how entertaining that can be. But our planning process basically started with the Sunday paper. So we see which major accounts were on feature that week, and then we go scramble on Monday morning. We've come a long way since the 90s. So SAP and other ERP systems technology really helps us try and do a better job. The last area is tying it all together. So I talked about closing the loop with sales and marketing and finance. So really, if you step back, the S&OP process is a reality check, right? And nobody take offense here as you read some of the buzz points, but every marketeer thinks they're going to sell a zillion, right? This is going to be bigger than Coke. The production guys would love to run one flavor all day long, right? But we've got a portfolio that's longer than your arm. The truck guys are thinking, man, I just want to get behind a truck and drive it all day long. And then finance is going, No, no, no. We can't afford to do that. And then planning's right in the middle. And I'm not saying we're the gatekeeper of everything. On the inside I am, but not on the outside. But somebody's got to be the one that balances this all out. And that's where the S&OP process comes in. And really, the goal is simple. It's synchronize the supply chain. So this is not new stuff. This is a process that's been around for 50 years, right? It's the discipline it takes to get everybody talking. So the forecast, the distribution, the supply, the manufacturing. If you go around the wheel here, you've got a consensus forecast, people talking about what's going to happen in the marketplace. Can I make it? You sit down with the executives and say, hey, this is what I heard you want to do, this is what I'm going to do, or these are the pinch points I've got, and we got to talk about it. And then the finance people are saying, yeah, if you execute all this, you're going to put X amount of money in the coffers. Right? So it's critical to have that routine. This occurs on a monthly, but I conduct calls every week that are sales and operations execution, right? So you're talking on the monthly one more strategic, but on the execution one, it's every week. You're talking about, do I have the right plans in place to cover the next 7 days of activity? Or am I going to have significant costs, or am I going to have significant supply issues? And you're having the same level of interaction. You've got plants, you've got marketing, you've got sales, but we're really talking about the close in. And we find that the more that we're talking close in like that, the greater level of success we have every week. All right. So, and the important thing is that you guys all come from different disciplines, but you have to learn to talk each other's language, right? Finance has to understand what sales and marketing are doing. Marketing has to have a concept of what it is for manufacturing. Manufacturing has to understand the importance that the marketing team has done to put product into the marketplace. So without it, all of this falls apart if you don't know how to talk to each other. And I think this might be my last slide at 7:28. So in closing, you can just read through this. Success requires cross-functional communication, collaboration, and understanding each other's primary goals and objectives. And they're not that hard to understand, right? You just got to have the dialogue. Because marketing and sales, they want to keep the guys coming back, consumers coming back for more. Finance is making sure we stay within the bumpers. Product supply, we want to make sure we have product in the middle of Malaysia, right? All right, so that's it. One or 2 minutes. Go ahead.
I had a question. I did have an opportunity to sample some of the products that you serve in the other countries.
Yeah.
How is that determined whether something stays regionally or crosses international lines, like the Mexican Coke is now coming into North America?
What happens is, and I'm trying to remember a brand that didn't do very well here recently, and it was another tea. And darn it, we just discontinued it. But it's what we try and do is not recreate the wheel, but if another part of the world has a very good product that we think will play in the United States, and then vice versa, we will bring that in an incubation process. Inviga tea, I'm sorry. So Inviga does very well somewhere else in the world. We thought maybe it would play here in the United States. We tried it for 2 years, never really caught on. So it's trying each other's brands. Sometimes the brands have grown up locally and they have a local following, and it's hard to get a foothold here. Sometimes we take the brands that are established, like Fuse, Vitamin Water, Honest Tea, and we downright purchase them. And then we continue to grow that brand equity. And one of the big benefits with Fuse and Vitamin Water is that they had a very strong following, but they had a very weak supply chain execution. They were using a very expensive system. We brought them into we basically pulled up everything that they were doing, manufacturing, distribution, brought it into our supply chain. So now their profitability is even greater, therefore we can grow those brands even more. Good question. Anybody else?
Rob, I have
Yes.
one final question. Typically, what does Wall Street want Coca-Cola to grow at every year? I mean, you're looking at billions and billions of dollars. It's very difficult to grow when you reach $50 billion. So,
right.
What's acceptable to Wall Street?
Sometimes with Wall Street, it doesn't matter how well we've done in the past.
Yeah.
They've been down on us. what I think Wall Street's primary objective, if you go back to that 2020 vision that I showed in the first couple of pages, we've had that same vision now for about the last 5 years. So I think what Wall Street's more important with is, do you have your house in order, or are you constantly changing your mind on what it is you want to do next? And we set the course 4 or 5 years ago. Stock has done rather well, even in bad economic times, and we're going to continue to hold course on that 2020 vision. Yeah, so good question though.
I think we're about ready
Are we
to
done?
wrap up.
Okay.
Oh, sure.
Can you explain how complicated the distribution contract is between Coke and McDonald's?
The agreement?
Can you explain how complicated it is?
It is. It is. John, good to meet you.
Hey, thanks.
It's a handshake. Whenever the handshake was made between Ray Kroc and the Coca-Cola president at the time, that handshake is still binding.
Good. And we want to thank Rob for being here. He did a great job.
Oh, thank you.
He sent you that.
Thanks, everyone.